Going to talk about a few things. Going to wrap up Incubate, a couple notes on it, and then talk about pacing and suspense and things like that for Come and Get It. A fun example of that jumping forward in time, hack sort of editing, quick cuts, fast pace. I just watched. It's a horrible movie, but the first 20 minutes of Six Underground on Netflix is ridiculous. It's Michael Bay. But I'll tell you, the editing is flawless in that first 20 minutes. It's like, and they jump forward in time so much and jump around, but yet they never lose the audience and never lose where you're at. Nothing ever looks like out of place. So it's a good example of just that. And it's all hard cuts, no dissolves, no cut the blacks, just hard cuts from one thing to another, and you follow along. And that's what you kind of have to loosen your thinking process about that, of how to just cut to the next thing. Don't worry about the audience will follow. The audience will put it together. I think we still have some of that. Some of you are afraid to just jump ahead, afraid to like cutting to black and then cutting to the next piece of action. Just cut to the next piece of action. Don't hesitate. Just cut. It will make sense. The audience will follow, especially nowadays with our short attention spans. And viewers are more savvy nowadays. I mean, really, go back and just watch even just a few minutes of that Six Underground action sequence, and you'll see that that is absolutely a great example of contemporary editing and jumping around in action, and he never loses you. It's really interesting. The editing, not the movie. The movie's horrible. It's very childish. Anyway, it's basically a reboot of the A-Team, if you guys know what the A-Team is, an old silly TV show, which was also a bad movie. A bunch of underground sort of vigilante justice kind of thing. Anyway, and then fine-tuning editing I want to talk about. So, when I had a job, I was full-time when I really started editing a lot. And so now I was stuck in the office all day. So I would finish a commercial or something, or a short corporate video piece, and then I was there till 5 o'clock. I mean, I had to, if things weren't busy, I had the day. So I'd kick the clients out of the room when they were done or they wanted to go, or the producer I was working with, I'd say, just leave me alone with it. And I would just go through that video over and over and over again and just fine tune every single edit and make sure every little music cue was perfect. And that polishing stage is actually my favorite part of editing. I sort of rush to get through it like a rough cut. And someone had asked me how long it took me to edit my Incubate. Well, I probably edited my initial cut in like probably 20 minutes to a half an hour. I work really fast to get an initial edit down. I want to feel the music hits and the cuts and just feel that action. And I want to lay it out first. And then I'll go back and then I'll tweak it and just fine tune it over and over and over again and look at every single edit and until it's just perfect, until there's nothing I don't see. And I had an old saying, fix everything you see because there's going to still be things that you don't see. So if you have the ability to fix something, you should as an editor, because there will be things you miss. So never say, oh, that's good enough. That's what separates the professionals from the amateurs. Is you want to be a professional editor, you're looking at all the flaws. You're fixing those little nuances, those little music cues, those little like hits of audio, like when we cut back and forth in the conversation and the ambience changes. I heard all that in those edits. You don't think I did, but I did. I think I mentioned it a couple times on some of your videos. So like grandma on the phone and then the girl and then the guy, the ambience changes. So you got to lay an ambient track underneath everything and to make sure it all sounds like it's all happening in the same moment in time. So that's just the kind of tweaking that needs, and that just comes with practice. You got to do it over and over and over again and learn. And so this last one, I'm going to push you on that because this is more of a narrative. It is a narrative, I'm sorry. And I want it to feel like a finished film. It needs to. Also, edit your final version with speakers. So I know most of us deal with headphones and you're editing with headphones on, but you got to hear it through speakers before it's done. So if you have the ability, if you have speakers set up at your computer, then unplug your headphones, and maybe when no one else is around or you're alone in the house or whatever, turn the speakers on. You got to hear it in the room and hear it in the space. One of the tricks you could do is upload to YouTube and then go watch it on your TV if you can get YouTube on your TV, and just feel it in the space. And that's where you'll hear flaws. And because headphones only get you so far. Back when I taught AIM last time, we did a test screening of everyone's short film, and we did a test screening in the black box studio with the speakers, and everyone had to go back the week before we were going to do the screening and work on their audio because everyone had been mixing with headphones on, and it's amazing the difference when you hear something through speakers. So really try and at least watch it 1 or 2 times before you send it to me or before you call it done. Listen to it through speakers. Now a little bit about suspense. I've put some YouTube videos on the lesson that involves suspense and building suspense. This is a fun little short film. There's a great opportunity for building suspense. I think the best example of what you can do in this film is in the No Country for Old Men scene of the one character waiting in the hotel room for the other character to come after him because he's got the money. There's a great situation of someone waiting at what's going to come through the door, and that's where you need to like create some beats and some moments and build that tension. You could do it silently or with music. This goes back to here's my little sort of lowbrow short story. See, the light can get it right. So, in building in a short story, the basic short story structure is intro, okay, introduce characters and the action, whatever, and then rising action, conflict, or suspense. So you want that sort of push up. If there isn't that rising action, you're not building suspense, so there isn't conflict, then it's just flat lines. So you want to build up to your climax. And this is the basic story structure for a short story, which is what this short film is. So rising action, conflict, and then in this film it's fun because you have this explosion of action, which is the climax, and then your falling action. So just there should be this constant build up of tension and suspense to when that explosion happens. And the explosion should happen and it shouldn't be dragged, like it should be interesting. Like I think a great example of that is the Inglourious Basterds scene in the bar, the shootout. The shootout happens pretty quickly. Like it's all about the suspense to the shootout, and then the shootout is an explosion. So it's not dragged out. So, have fun with those fight scenes. But I think in the past I've noticed people get sort of bogged down with the fight scenes. And have some fun and get that going, keep that going. Don't drag that out. Like it should be a rising action and then explosion of action and stuff. And then there's a sort of a surprise twist at the end. So have fun with all that, please. But really try and think of, this is where we go to that next level as an editor, where you're a storyteller. So this is a fun little film, and you need to be a storyteller. You're now the director, you're the producer, you're the writer, you're all those things. You are the final part of finishing this film, of telling this story. Because right now it's just a bunch of jumbled footage. And it could be really flatlined and very uninteresting. It'd just be like, there's people in the room, people show up, there's a fight, and it's over. There's opportunities here to build suspense and create conflict and create something interesting. And what you want is for people to watch it because we don't know what's going to happen next. That's how you build that suspense and that conflict. What is going to happen next? And in those 3 big scenes, which is the Jaws one's very short, but it still has that a good example of that. The birds flying in and resting behind the woman in the movie The Birds. Inglourious Basterds, the gun under the table. And in No Country for Old Men, the hotel and the door and the light going off and the money. There's the same thought, is what's going to happen next? And you start imagining, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? And you want to keep the audience guessing. So you want to build that tension, build that conflict. And that's where the fun comes in. That's where the storytelling comes in.